What if I told you that an Olympic sprinter losing gold by 0.01 seconds didn't actually lose because they lacked muscle?
Right.
Like, they didn't lose because they skipped a day at the gym. They lost because their brain hesitated for a fraction of a millisecond. Today, we are exploring this really radical idea that honestly challenges almost everything we assume about human performance.
And I think the craziest part is where this idea even originated.
Mhm.
Because we aren't starting in some high-tech biomechanics lab. We are actually starting with an elderly, bedridden French painter from the 20th century.
I know, it sounds like the setup to a really surreal joke.
Yeah, totally.
But the connection here is profoundly real, and it is going to fundamentally change how you think about moving your own body. So today we are doing a deep dive into this incredibly fascinating presentation put together by Dr. Christophe Delong and Kinexa Formation.
Right. The presentation is titled Henri Matisse, the Master of Freedom.
Exactly. And our mission today is to really unpack how Kinexa uses the artistic philosophy of Henri Matisse to just completely redefine motor fluidity, biomechanics, and, well, human movement in general.
It's just this brilliant collision of art history and sports science.
Yeah.
I mean, Dr. Christophe Delong and Kinexa are basically arguing that a century ago, an artist visually solved a biological problem that neurologists are, honestly, only just now learning how to measure.
Okay, let's unpack this. Because to understand the hard science of what Kinexa is actually measuring on the track, we first have to step into an artist's studio.
A very specific studio.
Yeah. So I want you, listening right now, to try and picture the visual sources we have in front of us. Imagine this rustic, really heavily used wooden table. The afternoon light is pouring in, and the table is entirely blanketed in these massive, vibrant pieces of paper.
Just incredibly bright colors.
Vivid green, piercing yellow, deep blue, bright red. And scattered among these pots of paint are heavy industrial metal scissors, plus these beautiful organic shapes that look like leaves and coral.
And to understand the real purpose behind all that organized chaos, we have to look at the man sitting right at the center of it, Henri Matisse.
Right.
He lived from 1869 to 1954. And the scene you just described, that wasn't the peak of his early career. This was actually a really late-in-life artistic shift for him.
Because he got sick, right.
Exactly. Toward the end of his life, Matisse became seriously ill. He was largely confined to a wheelchair or his bed, so he physically could no longer stand at an easel and paint in the traditional way, the way that it made him this global icon.
Which, I mean, for a master painter, you would think that is the absolute end of the road. Your body fails, so your art just has to stop.
That is the logical assumption, yeah. But Matisse just refused to accept that limitation. So instead of stopping, he invented an entirely new art form out of pure necessity.
Which is where the paper comes in.
Right. He started working with what we now call paper cutouts. His assistants would paint these broad sheets of paper with brilliant, solid colors. And Matisse would just sit there with a pair of scissors, and he would cut directly into the color.
The presentation actually describes this as sculpting in color. And the detail here that I just find so gripping is the absolute finality of the act itself.
Absolutely. The finality is everything.
Because with a traditional oil painting, you can sketch out the proportions in pencil first. You can layer the paint, scrape it off, adjust the shading, step back, rethink your strategy. You have the luxury of hesitation.
You can always fix it.
Right. But with scissors and a piece of raw paper, every single cut is a pure, direct, and completely irreversible gesture.
There is zero room for doubt. None. No underlying pencil sketches guiding the blade. The Kinexa presentation highlights this beautifully. They note that the hand and the vision were united in a single, unbroken movement.
Wow.
It was a total commitment of the entire nervous system to a single action.
It really makes me think of what that actually feels like in reality. You know, think about doing something completely irreversible in your own life.
Yeah, it's terrifying.
It's like performing a live monologue on stage without a safety net, or sending a highly consequential email when you know you don't have a backspace key. Once you start the motion, you just have to commit. You have to ride the wave of that decision all the way to the very end.
Fully trusting your own execution.
Exactly.
And that courage to commit to the gesture is really everything here. But Matisse had actually been searching for this kind of purity for his entire life, way before the illness even forced him to use the scissors.
Right. The presentation brings up one of his older works.
Yeah, if we look back at one of his most famous masterpieces, it's a painting from 1910 called Danse.
The visual from the source deck for this one captures it perfectly. It's 5 bright red bodies holding hands, and they are dancing in a circle against this incredibly flat background of just green and blue.
It is shockingly simple.
It really is, almost aggressively simple.
But look closely at how those bodies are rendered. Matisse intentionally stripped away all the anatomical perfection. There are no detailed muscle striations, no realistic lighting, no complex facial features.
He reduced the human form down to what the presentation actually calls its cinematographic essence.
Just a curve,
Yeah.
a tension, a direction.
Yeah, it feels like you were looking at the abstract idea of movement rather than a frozen photograph of an actual person moving.
Exactly. Matisse found that stripping away anatomical detail revealed the pure essence of movement. And ironically, a century later, biomechanics experts realized that this exact process of subtraction is actually the biological secret to elite athleticism.
Which is just wild to think about.
It really is, and it's precisely what Dr. Delong and Kinexa are mapping out today.
That transition from visual subtraction to biomechanical subtraction is just fascinating to me. Kinexa's philosophy perfectly mirrors what Matisse was doing with those scissors.
They are completely aligned. The central thesis of Kinexa is that true movement, whether you are, swinging a golf club, throwing a punch, or running a marathon, it isn't about anatomical perfection.
Oh?
It is about functional freedom. A body moving without inner resistance.
But wait, I have to push back here a little bit because how can you tell a heavyweight weightlifter, like a professional linebacker, that adding muscle or force is somehow noise?
Right, it sounds backwards.
Surely force generation requires addition. The entire sports industry is literally built on the premise of adding things. Adding reps, adding mass, adding complex routines to your toolkit. This idea of subtraction just sounds completely counterintuitive to real performance.
That is the most natural reaction to have, really. And it highlights the difference between raw physical capacity and motor fluidity. Building the size of the engine, the muscle itself, is one thing. But Kinexa is evaluating the transmission. We are so conditioned to look at the surplus, the visible strength. But Kinexa's essential rule focuses entirely elsewhere. They do not look at what the body does in excess. They look at what the body prevents from expressing itself.
What the body prevents. That is an interesting way to phrase it.
Yeah, because when an athlete trains purely by adding, they very often build these elaborate systems of neurological compensation. Force generation doesn't actually matter if your nervous system is simultaneously fighting against itself.
Wait, fighting itself how?
Think about it mechanically. If you have chronic tightness in your left hip, your body is smart. It automatically adds a compensatory twist to your right shoulder, just to keep you balanced while you run.
Oh, I see.
That extra twist is physical noise. Kinexa is about stripping away that noise to find the pure, uninhibited gesture, just like Matisse cutting away the excess paper to leave only the essential shape.
So, to build on your car engine analogy, it's not really about strapping a bigger turbocharger onto the car. It's about realizing you've been driving around with the parking brake pulled up by 3 clicks this entire time.
Yes, exactly. Taking the parking brake off yields a massive immediate return on performance without requiring a single extra ounce of muscle.
Okay, that makes perfect logical sense. But I'm putting myself in the listener's shoes here for a second. It sounds deeply poetic, but how do you actually measure freedom in a human body?
That's a great question.
Like, you can't just wrap a tape measure around a sprinter's quad and write down, yes, 3 inches of functional freedom. Where does this actually live inside of us?
To find it, we have to look under the hood into the actual neurophysiology of motor fluidity. We need to look at how the brain processes movement in real time.
Okay, so getting into the biology.
Right. The Kinexa presentation highlights 3 specific brain regions that have to communicate perfectly for fluid movement to occur. First, we have the primary motor cortex.
The generator.
Yeah, let's use an electrical grid analogy. The primary motor cortex is the power plant generating the raw voltage. It initiates the command, the conscious intent to move.
Got it. I want to move, so the power plant fires up.
Exactly. Second, you have the cerebellum. This acts kind of like the grid's transformers. It manages the timing, the rhythm, and the coordination.
So it's shaping the raw power.
Right. It ensures the voltage flows at the correct frequency, so the movement happens smoothly in actual physical space and time.
So the cortex says, swing the racket, and the cerebellum figures out the precise trajectory and timing to actually hit the incoming tennis ball.
You've got it. But the third component is where the real magic happens. And honestly, it's where the failure happens too. The basal ganglia.
Okay, the basal ganglia, what do they do?
These structures act like complex surge protectors. The basal ganglia filter the signals. They allow the desired movement to pass through, but they actively inhibit all the unwanted competing muscle contractions that would ruin the gesture. So when you reach for a cup of coffee, your basal ganglia are actively stopping your triceps from firing and yanking your arm backward.
Okay, that makes so much sense. So if you are listening to this and wondering why your golf swing completely falls apart the second you feel tournament pressure, this basal ganglia filter is what's actually failing you.
That is a perfect real-world application. It gets overloaded by the stress. Kinexa's technology essentially evaluates the optimal synchronization between these three areas.
The cortex, the cerebellum, and the basal ganglia.
Exactly. They evaluate how synced they are during every single repetition of a movement. They measure the resulting motor decision quality by analyzing the reaction times and the biomechanical outputs. Basically, they can detect even the absolute slightest micro-hesitations.
And what does the data actually show when they measure this synchronization?
Well, we see two very distinct states of movement. The first is the synchronized state. When the power plant, the transformer, and the surge protectors are perfectly aligned, the movement is exquisitely fluid.
It just flows.
It flows, it is highly economical in terms of energy consumption, and it is incredibly precise.
Bringing Matisse back into the room here, a perfectly synchronized movement where the brain and the body are in total, unfiltered agreement. That is the biological equivalent of his flawless paper cutouts.
Yes, that is exactly it.
It's a single, united, irreversible gesture. No internal conflict whatsoever.
The harmony is completely measurable.
Yeah.
But the data also reveals the second state, which is desynchronized movement. When that synchronization fails, the movement becomes fragmented.
It gets choppy.
Very choppy. And it becomes neurologically costly. The body burns so much unnecessary energy just trying to manage conflicting signals. The grid is essentially experiencing power surges and brownouts. This is what Kinexa calls a noisy movement.
Let's dig into the why here, though. Assuming an athlete is healthy and highly trained, what actually causes the basal ganglia to throw these surge protectors on and create all that noise?
We have to look at neuroplasticity for that, specifically the creation of motor engrams.
Okay, give me an example.
Sure. Let's say you severely sprained your ankle 5 years ago. Your conscious mind, your primary motor cortex has completely moved on.
Right, you think you're totally healed, you feel fine.
But your basal ganglia learned a harsh lesson. It learned to implement a strategy of protective guarding. So it developed a habit of sending these tiny inhibitory signals, literally applying the brakes slightly every single time you plant that foot, just to protect that old vulnerability.
Wow, so it's phantom protection for a threat that doesn't even exist anymore.
Exactly, which creates massive inner resistance. The body prevents itself from full expression because those old motor patterns are still whispering doubt deep into the nervous system.
That is fascinating.
And this neurological noise isn't just some abstract theory for academics to debate in a lab. In the elite world of high-stakes athletics, this desynchronization has a devastating, mathematically measurable cost.
Yeah, let's talk about those numbers, because the presentation outlines this concept called motor decision quality, and it centers around what we can call the 100% rule.
The rule defines the absolute ceiling of human performance. An athlete who engages fully, without any neurological hesitation or protective guarding, mobilizes 100% of their physical capacities.
So all the strength, the biomechanical leverage, all the muscle fibers they have painstakingly built, all of that is successfully delivered into the actual kinetic output.
The pathway from the brain to the limb is entirely clear.
But the Kinexa data reveals the sheer price of doubt.
It really does.
If an athlete hesitates, like if that neurological noise from the basal ganglia interferes for even a microsecond, they only mobilize 70% of their physical capacity.
I have 30% drop.
A 30% drop in output simply because the brain hesitated. That is staggering.
It really changes how you look at a missed play.
It goes right back to the sports car analogy. You have the massive engine, you have the custom tires, you press the gas pedal all the way to the floorboard, but the onboard computer firmware is glitching?
Yeah, it senses a false stat.
Right. And it artificially restricts the fuel line. You are trapped at 70% horsepower, not because the hardware is broken, but because the software just refuses to trust the hardware.
The brain is actively restricting the fuel line. And the most crucial data point Dr. Delong and Kinexa provide really drives this whole concept home. They look at a sprinter launching off the starting blocks.
Okay.
When the starting pistol fires, if that sprinter hesitates neurologically, they lose hundredths of a second. 0.01 seconds, lost before they even take a full stride.
And in a 100-meter sprint, 0.01 seconds is an absolute eternity.
It's the whole race.
That is literally the margin between standing on the gold medal podium and not making the podium at all.
And the profound takeaway here is recognizing exactly where that time evaporated. That 0.01 seconds wasn't lost because the sprinter's leg muscles lacked power. It wasn't lost because they skipped a day in the weight room or didn't eat enough protein. It was lost deep within their nervous system. The delay was entirely in the transmission, a brief failure of synchronization between the motor cortex, the cerebellum, and the basal ganglia.
The physical capacity was fully loaded, but the functional freedom to actually unleash it was compromised.
And that biological reality brings us right back to Matisse.
It honestly does.
Mm-hmm.
There is a quote from Matisse featured at the very beginning of the presentation that completely frames this. Matisse said, "Creativity requires the courage to let go of certainties."
It is the unifying principle of everything we've discussed today.
It really is, because whether you are a bedridden artist cutting into a bright blue piece of paper, or you are an Olympic sprinter exploding off a starting block, hesitation destroys the gesture.
Absolutely.
The second you try to consciously control the action too much, the second you let protective guarding or doubt enter the neurological system, you lose the essence of what you were trying to do.
You abandon the 100% engagement and you settle for the 70%. You just surrender to the noise.
What an unbelievable conceptual journey this is. I mean, we have gone from the quiet, sunlit studio of a dying master painter who found absolute radical freedom with a pair of scissors, all the way to modern sports tech, mapping the exact millisecond that neurological hesitation costs a professional athlete their career-defining moment.
It completely flips the script on how you evaluate human movement.
It forces a total shift in perspective. You have to stop asking, what can I add to my training, and start asking what neurological noise is actually standing in my way.
Exactly. Subtraction over addition.
Now, if you are listening to this and you want to see what this looks like in practice, or you want to dive into the specific methodology Kinexa uses to actually train this out of athletes, there are some really incredible resources provided in the source material today.
Yeah, they provided a lot of great visuals.
Instead of just listing them, let's talk about how you can use them. If you want to see the visual application of these concepts in motion, Kinexa maps this out in their video series called Les Visionnaires du Geste. Specifically, Episode X covers the complete series arc.
And watching that movement synchronization visually really helps solidify the connection between the brain and the body. It brings the data to life.
It definitely does. Now, if you want to dig into the deep theory we've been discussing today, there is a very comprehensive Kinexa ebook titled Matisse, la liberté du geste, as well as the full presentation deck by the exact same name.
And for the professionals listening.
Oh, yeah. If you are in the coaching, athletic, or medical space and you want to actually apply this technology professionally, you can explore Kinexa Formation by visiting formation.kinexa.ai. You can even book a direct demonstration of their technology through kinexa.ai.
The applications for measuring functional freedom really go far beyond elite track and field. I mean, the implications for rehabilitation, physical therapy, and just daily mobility are immense.
I couldn't agree more.
In fact, I'd like to leave you with something to consider as we wrap up today's deep dive.
Let's hear it.
We spent a lot of time analyzing world-class sprinters and legendary artists. But turn that lens on your own daily life. Think about your decisions, your daily routines, your conversations, even your creative projects. Where is the neurological noise in your day?
Oh, that's a good question.
What are the old invisible habits, the past injuries, or the protective guarding acting like surge protectors on your own expression? If your life was a Matisse cutout, what excess hesitation would you trim away right now with one irreversible cut to finally move through your day with 100% total engagement?
That is an incredibly powerful question to carry with you. I am definitely going to be unpacking my own basal ganglia resistance all afternoon now.
We all have some.
We really do. Well, thank you so much for exploring this profound intersection of art and neuroscience with us. And to everyone listening, thank you for joining us on this deep dive. Stay curious, trust your instincts, and we will catch you next time.